Behind every locked door lies a story the world was never meant to hear. Welcome to Behind Bars TV, where we uncover the hidden realities of the world's toughest prisons, untold inmate experiences, and the systems built to contain them. From supermax facilities to forgotten penitentiaries, we revealed the truth behind concrete walls and razor wire. This is not fiction. This is the world behind bars. Inside the world of prison hitmen, there are no contracts signed, no witnesses, no official records, just whispers. Inside prison, power doesn't always come from size or numbers. Sometimes it comes from reputation, a name spoken quietly across a housing unit, a debt that has to be settled, a message that has to be sent. And somewhere inside that system are individuals known for carrying out violence on behalf of others. This is not fiction. This is the hidden economy of influence, fear, and control inside prison systems around the world. Today, we're going inside that world to understand how it works, why it exists, and what it costs. The economy of power inside prison. Prison is not just confinement. It is a system of informal economies. Inside, everything has value: protection, information, commissary items, loyalty, and, in some environments, violence becomes part of that economy. Not random, structured, controlled. Certain inmates gain influence by being known as enforcers, people who act on behalf of larger groups or leadership figures. Former inmates and investigators describe this as power delegated through fear. These individuals are rarely loud. They don't need to be. Their reputation moves ahead of them. How reputation becomes currency. In prison, reputation is everything. It determines who gets left alone, who gets tested, who gets recruited, who gets targeted. Some inmates build reputation through past crimes, behavior inside prison, affiliation with groups. Others gain it through consistency, following through on expectations, never backing down, never showing hesitation. Over time, certain individuals become known not just as participants, but as people others rely on to enforce consequences. And once that reputation is established, it rarely needs to be proven again. The system within the system. Prisons operate under official rules. But inside many facilities, there is also an unofficial system. This system is built on group loyalty, internal discipline, conflict resolution. In some cases, disputes are handled internally before staff are ever aware. These may involve debt disagreements, rule violations within groups, conflicts between rival affiliations. Individuals known for carrying out enforcement actions often exist within this structure, not as random actors, but as part of an organized internal hierarchy. Former investigators describe it as a parallel system operating beneath the official one. And that system can be difficult to detect from the outside. How recruitment really happens. No one walks into prison and immediately becomes part of a power structure. They are observed first. New inmates are watched closely. How they speak, how they respond to pressure, whether they stand alone or seek protection, how they handle conflict. Groups inside prison don't recruit randomly. They look for individuals who show emotional control, willingness to follow direction, consistency under pressure. Sometimes recruitment begins subtly. A conversation in the day room, an offer of protection, a small favor. But those small moments often carry long-term expectations. Former inmates describe it as, you don't realize you're being tested until you already are. And once someone enters that system, stepping out becomes difficult. Pressure, loyalty, and choice. In prison, choice is rarely simple. Many inmates face pressure from multiple directions. Join a group, accept protection, follow expectations. Refusal can carry consequences. Acceptance creates obligations, and those obligations can escalate over time. Some individuals are drawn deeper into group structures because they feel safer inside a system. They lack alternatives. They are trying to survive, Others are pressured more directly. Former detainees often describe a turning point. You think you're making a decision, but really the decision is being made for you. Loyalty becomes currency, and breaking that loyalty can be dangerous. The psychology of detachment. One of the most discussed aspects of prison environments is psychological adaptation. Individuals exposed to constant tension often develop coping mechanisms. Emotional detachment, hyperawareness, controlled reactions. For those involved in enforcing group rules, this adaptation can become more pronounced. They may limit emotional expression, focus on routine, separate actions from feelings. Psychologists studying incarceration environments often describe this as survival conditioning. It's not about becoming fearless. It's about becoming controlled. One former inmate explained it simply. You don't stop feeling. You just stop showing it. Over time, this mindset can become permanent, even beyond prison walls. How orders move without words. Inside prison, direct communication about sensitive matters is rare. It doesn't need to be spoken loudly. It moves through short phrases, body language, timing, intermediaries, a glance across a day room, a brief conversation at the right moment, a message passed through another inmate. Former investigators often describe this as layered communication. No single message carries full meaning, but when combined, it becomes clear to those inside the system. For example, a simple instruction might be split across multiple conversations. Different individuals may carry pieces of the same message. Meaning is understood through context, not detail. This makes it extremely difficult to detect, because to an outsider, it looks like normal interaction. The role of intermediaries. Not everyone inside these structures acts directly. Many roles are indirect. Some inmates function as intermediaries, passing messages, clarifying expectations, relaying decisions. They are often less visible, less recognized, but essential, because they reduce direct connection between decision-makers and outcomes. Former prison investigators have noted, if you remove the middle layer, the system becomes easier to trace. That's why intermediaries exist. They create distance, and distance creates protection. Why this system is hard to detect. Correctional facilities are heavily monitored. Cameras cover hallways, day rooms, entrances, movement areas. Officers observe patterns, behavior, interactions. But systems built on subtle communication are difficult to identify. Why? Because no direct evidence is often visible. Conversations appear ordinary. Actions may not be linked clearly to decisions. Investigators rely on pattern recognition, informant testimony, behavioral analysis. Even then, connecting events to intent can be complex. One correctional investigator explained, "You're not looking for one moment. You're looking for a pattern over time. And patterns take time to uncover." When prison influence reaches outside, prison is designed to contain people. But communication still exists. Inmates may have access to monitored phone calls, legal visits, mail systems. These channels are controlled, but not silent. In some documented cases, investigators have found that influence can extend beyond prison walls through conversations with outside contacts, indirect communication through associates, ongoing relationships established before incarceration. This does not mean constant control or coordination, but it does show that prison is not always fully disconnected from the outside world. Law enforcement agencies monitor these channels carefully, because even limited communication can carry weight. How investigators build cases. Investigating organized activity inside prisons is complex. Agencies rely on multiple methods: monitoring communication logs, reviewing surveillance footage, interviewing cooperating witnesses, analyzing patterns across incidents. No single piece of evidence tells the full story. Instead, investigators build cases gradually. They connect. Who spoke to whom? When patterns changed? which events followed certain interactions. Former investigators describe this process as building a puzzle without knowing the final picture. In some cases, months or years of data are required to understand the full structure. And even then, proving intent can be challenging. When cases reach the courts. When sufficient evidence is gathered, cases move to court. Prosecutors must demonstrate clear connections between individuals, verified communication patterns, credible witness testimony, supporting documentation. Defense attorneys may challenge interpretation of communication, reliability of witnesses, lack of direct evidence. These cases are often complex because they rely heavily on circumstantial patterns, interpretation of behavior, context rather than explicit statements. Judges and juries must evaluate not just actions, but intent. And proving intent in environments built on subtle communication is one of the greatest legal challenges. When reputation becomes a trap, it protects you, but it also locks you in. Once an inmate is seen as someone who enforces rules or carries out expectations, that identity becomes permanent. Others begin to expect consistency. No hesitation, no weakness, no change, and that creates pressure. Former inmates describe this as a turning point. You stop choosing who you are because everyone else has already decided. Backtracking becomes difficult. Stepping away can be seen as disloyalty, weakness, instability. So the role continues, not always by choice, but by expectation. The constant pressure to perform. Inside prison, status is not static. It must be maintained. That means responding to challenges, meeting expectations from others, remaining consistent under pressure. Even small moments matter. A hesitation, a change in behavior, a perceived weakness. All of it is noticed. Psychologists who study incarceration environments often highlight this. The pressure inside prison isn't constant noise. It's constant awareness. For individuals tied to enforcement roles, this awareness is amplified. They must think ahead. How will this action be seen? Who is watching? What does this signal? And over time, that constant pressure reshapes behavior. Emotional control as survival. One of the most common traits described by former inmates is emotional control. Not the absence of feeling, but the absence of expression. In high-pressure environments, showing emotion can reveal vulnerability, signal instability, invite attention. So many inmates learn to stay neutral, speak minimally, control reactions. For those with reputations tied to enforcement or influence, this becomes even more critical. They are expected to remain calm, controlled, predictable. Over time, this emotional suppression becomes habit. And habits formed in prison don't always disappear after release. When someone tries to walk away, in prison, roles can feel permanent. But some individuals reach a point where they want distance from the system they've been part of. Reasons vary. Fatigue, reflection, fear of consequences, desire for change. Stepping back may begin quietly. Limiting interactions, avoiding certain conversations, refusing involvement. But in environments built on consistency, change is noticed quickly. And once noticed, it raises questions. Why now? What changed? Can they still be trusted? Former inmates often describe this moment as one of the most stressful periods of incarceration. Because it's not just about personal decision. It's about how others interpret that decision. Consequences of disengagement. Inside tightly structured prison environments, disengagement can carry consequences. Not always immediate, not always visible, but often present. Consequences may include loss of protection, social isolation, increased scrutiny from others. In some cases, individuals are left alone. In others, they must navigate a new position within the prison hierarchy. Former correctional staff explain, the system inside prison doesn't always punish directly. Sometimes it simply removes support. And in an environment where support equals safety, That shift matters. When the system intervenes, correctional systems are aware that internal dynamics can create risk. In certain situations, staff may intervene to protect individuals or maintain order. This can involve housing unit transfers, separation from specific groups, placement in protective custody, increased monitoring. These decisions are not taken lightly. They are based on behavior patterns, intelligence gathered inside the facility, safety assessments. Protective custody, in particular, can be a difficult adjustment. It may provide safety, but also introduces isolation. And isolation brings its own challenges. Life after prison. Can identity change? Eventually, some inmates leave prison, but prison doesn't always leave them. For individuals who carried strong reputations inside, re-entry into society brings a new challenge. Who are they now? Outside, the rules are different. There is no housing unit hierarchy, no day room politics, no constant observation from others. But habits remain. Former inmates often describe heightened awareness in public spaces, difficulty trusting others, emotional restraint in normal conversations, a need for structure after years of routine. For those who once operated within systems built on reputation, letting go of that identity can take time, sometimes years, sometimes longer. One former inmate explained it simply. You leave the environment, but the environment doesn't leave you right away. What this world reveals. The world inside prison is often described in extremes: violence, control, survival. But beneath all of that is something more complex. It is a system shaped by environment, pressure, structure, human behavior. The roles people take on inside prison are not created in isolation. They are shaped by circumstances, expectations, systems that reward certain behaviors. This documentary is not about glorifying violence. It is about understanding how systems influence people and what happens when individuals adapt to survive within them. Because the most important question is not who becomes powerful inside prison. It is what creates the conditions where power takes that form. And until those conditions are understood, the cycle continues. The ones who never get noticed. Not everyone in this system is visible. In fact, some of the most important roles are played by people no one pays attention to. They don't stand out. They don't lead conversations. They don't carry reputations that spread across units. They blend in. These individuals move between groups without drawing attention, observe more than they speak, carry information without appearing involved. Former investigators often describe them as the quiet connectors. They are not defined by action, but by access. And in systems built on information, access is power. Because sometimes the person who does nothing visibly is the one who understands everything. When time changes everything, time moves differently in prison. Days are structured, weeks repeat, years accumulate quietly. And over time, even the most controlled individuals begin to change. Physical energy fades. Priorities shift. Perspectives evolve. Some inmates begin to reflect on decisions that shape their path, roles they once held, consequences that cannot be reversed. Former inmates often describe a moment that comes unexpectedly. You stop thinking about surviving today and start thinking about everything that led you here. But prison does not pause for reflection. The system continues, and individuals must continue within it. The weight of memory. Prison eventually quiets down, not in noise, but in reflection. Long after reputation fades, after pressure stabilizes, after roles become less relevant, memory remains. Moments replay, decisions resurface, paths are reconsidered. And in that quiet, one reality becomes clear. The system shapes behavior, but individuals carry the outcome, not just inside prison, but long after it ends. A global pattern. The dynamics explored in this documentary are not limited to one country. Across different prison systems around the world, researchers and investigators have observed similar patterns. Informal hierarchies forming among inmates. Influence shaped by reputation rather than official authority. Internal systems of discipline and control. Communication networks that operate beneath supervision. The details vary. The structure remains familiar. In overcrowded facilities, these patterns often become more pronounced. In highly controlled environments, they become more subtle, but still present. This raises an important question. Are these systems created by individuals, or by the environments they are placed in? Criminologists often point to a consistent conclusion. When formal systems are strained, informal systems emerge. And prisons, by design, are high-pressure environments. The cycle that continues. Prison is often seen as an endpoint. But for many, it is part of a cycle. Individuals enter the system, adapt to survive within it, leave with those adaptations, and sometimes return. Each cycle reinforces learned behaviors, survival strategies, social conditioning, and with each return, adaptation becomes faster, more automatic, more ingrained. This is what makes prison systems complex, because they don't just contain behavior. They can shape it. The question is not just what happens inside prison, but what happens because of it. There are no headlines for most of what happens inside prison. No cameras, no recordings, no clear narratives. Just systems operating quietly, people adapting constantly, and consequences that extend far beyond the walls. This story was never about one individual. It was about understanding a world most people will never see, and asking one final question. If environments shape behavior, what responsibility do we have for the environments we create? What you just saw is more than a story. It's a reality lived by thousands behind bars. If you believe in uncovering the truth, the kind hidden behind concrete walls and silence, then join us. Subscribe to Behind Bars TV and never miss a chapter in the world's most dangerous stories. Until next time, stay aware, stay informed, subscribe, and stay locked in. Until next time, keep your mind open and your curiosity sharp. Remember, freedom and confinement are sometimes only a wall apart.